Still on the search of that one true love? On the limbo in this crazy world of dating, marriage, relationships? Well, listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Relationship Podcast, your one-stop podcast for everything about relationships.
Hello, and welcome to Golden State Media Concepts Relationships Podcast. I'm your host, John Johnson. And today I'm going to talk about, say, guilt and a few other things. So this is going to be the relationship podcast and how you relate to yourself. You know, a lot of times I talk about how you relate to other people, how you relate to your kids, situations. Well, this is one of those situations and how you relate to yourself. And talking about the guilt thing. Now, sometimes it's hard to describe to people because it's a feeling that you might get in the pit of your stomach. Maybe your heart might beat a little faster. You might sweat a little bit, but it's sort of a result of something that you're experiencing. Let's say maybe if you didn't tell somebody something that you needed to tell them, or you took something that you shouldn't have taken. Maybe you forgot a birthday or an anniversary or something like that. And it's just really weighing on you. And I think the word that we can use to describe how that feels on the inside is guilt. Now how you come to experience that feeling probably comes way out of your childhood, because it's one of those things that parents use to get into your head. They sort of create a conscience of you to say, if you don't do something, this is what's going to happen to you. So, like, some bad thing is going to happen if you don't do what I say. And parents often have to do that because they can't teach you everything there is to know in life. I mean, most kids are in no place that they can understand things from an adult's point of view. So it's up to the parents or somebody who's in charge of the kid to explain things in a way that they can hang on to it. And even in the case of a lot of parents, some don't do a very good job of explaining stuff, but they just leave you with the orders. But it kind of starts out as being one of those things that preserves you, right? You tell a kid, you don't go out in the street, because if you do, I'm not going to let you play on that toy or something. You know, there's something that has to have a consequence to it. And it's that feeling that if you do something bad's going to happen to you. See, that's where a lot of this starts. And, you know, when we become adults, when we get older, we don't even remember how this thing really began for us. We just know that it's a feeling that we had, and it just goes with us on and on and on and on and on. And then somewhere down the road, we make the connection that, hey, if we said something that we shouldn't have said, or you took something that you shouldn't have taken, you got caught, you got punished for it, you know, there's this consequence. And that consequence is, one of them is how you feel about yourself. Because if you did something you shouldn't have done, then you hear about it. Your parents tell you, oh, you're a bad person, you'll never get this, and just story on story on story on story. Now, we take that experience and we grow up with that. And sometimes when you're a parent and you're raising kids, you do the same thing to your own kids, right? I mean, part of it is to try to get control of them, make them mind. And for a lot of the reasons, like I said, we can't explain to kids all the things that we want to protect them from. We just have to leave them with an idea that there are consequences to things if they don't follow our rules. Now, some people take that a little too far, but I can talk about that at another moment. But it's how this feeling gets to us, how we experience that, and then carry that forward, and we never think about it. And then when we get older and we start feeling guilt, sometimes we think we're powerless to do something to change that feeling. for example, if you, say, forget something that is important, like your significant other's birthday, or you have an anniversary or something like that, or you've made a promise to somebody and by some reason you did not keep the promise. Maybe you forgot, or maybe you changed your mind and you didn't say something. So all of these are going to get reactions. You're going to get feelings. They're going to feel a certain way, and you're going to feel a certain way. The way they experience this, they experience the hurt, the disappointment, and then they let you know about it. And as you're listening to this, that childhood experience of disappointing your parents or being scolded or something like that, all of those feelings start coming back. And a lot of what that is, we can describe that as being guilt. So what happens? You're in this adult place, and you've probably had these things happen a number of times. So you can play that scenario in your head before anybody ever gets to you. And when we're in that sort of place, sometimes we just get stuck and we don't know what to do. You, I, whatever. We just get stuck. And dealing with guilt can have far-ranging consequences. I mean, there's people that just analyze the thing forever and ever and never move forward. They just get stuck. And then situation after situation, but they don't get any better with it. Others, they're pretty good at compartmentalizing. They just kind of throw it in the heap with all the other things that might make them feel bad and just bypass it and go on. And sometimes we kind of consider whether those people don't even have empathy when you think about the consequence of, say, maybe not being honest or telling a lie or taking from someone. You know, most people, when you steal something from somebody, you have some sort of reaction to it. You say, and it teaches you that that's a bad thing. You know, especially if you learn that as a kid. Hey, stealing is bad. Don't do that. Some people think about the karma thing. I was just reading an article not too long ago about somebody who had stolen some ketchup bottles or something out of a restaurant. And apparently what happened to that individual is they had incident on top of incident that happened shortly thereafter, and they described it as karma. So they felt so guilty about having taken that, the ketchup. They went back to the restaurant, put 2 bottles of ketchup on the counter, left a note, hoping that this whole thing, their bad luck, would end. Okay? That, with what you would describe that feeling to them, was guilt. So, now that I've given you a few examples of that, the thing that I want to talk a little bit about is, you know, how we get past that. How you overcome the guilt so that you can be in action so your day can progress. Sometimes in the experience of this, especially when it comes to your interaction with someone else, somebody has told you how they feel about something that you did. You forgot. You shouldn't have forgotten. Well, that can be pretty hard on you. Especially when it's somebody you love, you might have been overwhelmed. You know, you probably don't even, at least at the moment, don't have an answer as to what could possibly happen. You might have to just go into your own happy place or quiet space and start thinking about what led to whatever happened. At least that's one of the ways in which I get to the bottom of it, because I kind of have to be in my quiet space and then sort of play the tape backwards. Think about what happened in my day. Where did I get off track? Did I get distracted? I've learned, having been a guy that doesn't really use lists to keep up with things, I'm prone to forgetting things, at least in certain moments. Now, I might have something that'll prompt me later, and for the good fortune of being able to move fairly quickly, I could probably make up for that. But there are times that I have forgotten things that were fairly important, and that's when I really feel bad if I've let somebody down. Now, that's one of those things that came up in my childhood. You know, my mother was a real responsible person, and boy, she taught me that if you don't do what you say you're going to do, then things are going to happen to you, and they're not going to be good, or something like that. But back to experiencing the the feeling of guilt and then what to do about it. One of the first things, like I said, that happens is when it has to do with you and another person, they bring their feelings to you. And if you're a person who's fairly empathetic, then you obviously can understand what they're feeling, what's happening. And you want to do something to change it. Now, for the experience that they are having, it might take them a little while to get over it, because you could probably offer a solution right then and there, and problem could be solved. But in the way that they're reacting to it, it's not going to happen right away. So I'm going to pause right here, and I'm going to come back and talk about what to do next.
The GSMC Sex Podcast is a show that examines all aspects of sexuality, from physical to emotional to spiritual. Join our hosts as they discuss age-old questions, common misconceptions, and the latest topics surrounding sex. They'll tackle topics about sexuality from the complicated to the hilarious and everything in between. GSMC Sex Podcast is your show for all of your questions about sex, even some you might not have thought of yet. Download the GSMC Sex Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you can find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Hi there, it's John with the Golden State Media Concepts Relationships Podcast, and I'm talking about what to do next. You're dealing with the guilt. Because other people have their speed at which they're going to process things, it may even delay you being able to get over this. That having been the case, you just sometimes have to just go through this on your own, be ready with an answer, with a solution to the problem, something that you caused, you have to deal with, and wait for them to come around. Because we all have different speeds in which we operate things. If you're a doer and you've been in this place before, obviously you don't want to be sit there and marinating in all of these bad feelings. And it may even make you seem, on the outside, it may make you seem as if you were unsympathetic to what other people are going through. Well, embrace this idea that you have processed this and you really want to resolve it. And because if you let that set on you, that because you want to get through to the other side of this, that is another layer of guilt. Can you see how that happens for you? That could be another layer of guilt. This could be the old stuff happening again, but at the experience of someone else being the catalyst. Because sometimes in your growth, you learn how to move through things a lot faster. Somebody else may not be at your level. So this is where your communication with them is going to kick in. You can share a little bit about yourself and that, hey, I'm feeling really bad about what's happened. I didn't mean to be forgetful, or insert whatever it is that happened there. But that you want to be cause in the matter. You want to bring about a peaceful solution to this. And you can offer whatever remedy you have, but I think part of it is you want to be in conversation with them, because the process of helping this other person get over their anger, get over their feelings about either being forgotten, being hurt, being dismissed, whatever it is, you're going to learn something about them in these moments. And maybe through the example of this conversation, they can learn something about problem solving. Because a lot of people don't have this particular skill. A lot of people do. But a lot of people don't have this particular skill. And when you employ this dialogue, this talking with them, it's very helpful. It's not always easy. And if you're not real familiar with this, if you're not very comfortable with this, it could be a bit thorny just to try to get through it. And one of the things that I suggest to people is when you're doing a little problem solving, doing one of these powwows, one of these get-togethers, sometimes it's good to write notes down. if you want to keep focused on your idea about how you feel, some of the problems you want to solve, you can write a few of these things down, and that might even help clear your head so that you can stay on task. But the idea is you, who kind of created the problem, created the situation, you want to show that you're being an active listener. So you have to do that for a while. And you also want to be part of the solution. Because for what it is, I'm sure that when you're feeling, and I'm using the word guilt because that's the pit of the stomach feeling, that's the sweating a little bit, that's when you feel a little nervous, you have some responsibility as to what's going on. I think it's good that you feel that you want to be part of the solution, because that's how you become one of the positive person in this. Now, some people that you deal with, sometimes they are used to being angry. That's just their thing. And you don't have to take that on. Now, it may be difficult to deal with somebody in the face of a problem that they have with getting past it. That might be part of their dysfunction. That might be something that they have got to learn. But we're talking about your part in this and how you can learn to help bring this to a positive conclusion. And in the meantime, help this other person learn how, by example, that there's other ways to deal with this. So like I said, you're going to be in the conversation with them. You're going to talk about what the problem is and how you might like to resolve it. And hopefully they're going to be on board with that. It might take them a few minutes. Remember, they may have to emote and really talk about how they feel in the moment. And they may even start bringing up old things that happened to them in the past. Now, that there is a clue to something that they have been dealing with for a long time, that they will be able to relate to a lot of things that have happened in their past. And that might even tell you that they are not used to problem solving. But, some people love to talk a lot. And this also may be an opportunity how this thing begins to diffuse. Because as they start talking about the past, sometimes it could be reminiscing. And listen for that. So it may not just always be about anger, but there may be some component to the reminiscing, because they might remember the time when they did something like this. The thing that that you've done to them. They may remember when it happened, and just by talking it out, they may be bringing about a solution and helping to dissolve this anxiety, this angst, this everything that's going on. Because you have to imagine that they are feeling something just like you are. Maybe not the exact same emotion, but they are feeling something too. And you could be kind of doing a 2-for-1. And I like these situations because these, I feel, are the kinds of things, and it's moving a direction of getting some resolution. That is really good to embrace. And you can feel that when it's happening. Now, as we're moving that direction, I think it's really good to use positive words, positive reinforcement. I think it's good to apologize for the mistake that you've made, or at least understand that giving them their time to express themselves to you is very important, because this may not be something that they've had an opportunity to do. And again, here's something to listen for. Are they talking about the situation that happened between you and them, or are they bringing up a lot of stuff in the past? That could be clues, like I said, to some unresolved issues. Now, if these past issues that they might be talking about seem to bring about a lot of anger, I mean, not just the reminiscing and the smiling and the nodding their heads and that is good stuff, but if it's bringing up some things that seem like they're unresolved and they really have some trouble with, it might be a good time to suggest that, hey, they should see a counselor so that they can process some things, because it seems like something is buried that's needing to be unearthed. And the experience with you kind of tapped into that and kind of started picking at an old wound. And those can be very, very hurtful. So that's not something that you have to take responsibility for, all that old stuff, but just know what you're listening for. So the reminiscing thing, again, that could be clues as to things that need more discussion, and that obviously could be bigger than what we're talking about here. And here's something else to look for, and this is something I talk about when it comes to problem solving. Think about what you did something that you may feel guilty about, but does their reaction really match what's gone on? I'm going to talk about that a little bit when I come back. Stay tuned.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Hello, welcome to Golden State Media Concepts Relationships Podcast. I'm John Johnson, talking about guilt and those things associated with it. Now, when I left off that last segment, I was mentioning about how you might be in conversation with someone whose reaction is way bigger than maybe the problem that we're talking about. That to me is a clue that they have some unresolved things. And what you did is you might have had an experience with them that triggered this, your forgetfulness or whatever it was that happened. And I know I started out by talking about your guilt, but these are the things that bring about some understanding and a reaction. And then through this whole process, you can learn about yourself as well. One of the things that I'm asking you to do is be in the place of being a listener, because when you're trying to problem solve, then what you want to do is really solve the problem. You could go overboard in your reaction because of your own guilt when, just say, for example, let's say it was a $5 mistake, and guilt will make you spend $100 trying to fix a $5 mistake. You got to learn that you make the mistake, then you make them whole. Doing $100 isn't going to make the situation better. It usually makes you go broke because you're being overly responsible, and that has something to do with how you're wired and how you're programmed. But coming back to their reaction, once you've experienced their reaction and you've kind of got that, maybe get that genie back in the bottle, now let's go back to you and how you're processing this and what brought your guilt on and how you're going to handle this. So one of the things that you can applaud yourself for is having the willingness to be in this conversation with them, because that's not an easy thing to do. Because, like I said, paying $100 for a $5 mistake, which is what a lot of people feel better about doing than talking it out and really coming to a better understanding and a better conclusion. Because maybe your mistake really was just one of misunderstanding. Maybe you didn't know something and you get a reaction from somebody. Maybe they miscommunicated something to you. I mean, there are so many variables to this. And that's what being in conversation, trying to, let's say, figure out what happened. Now, it may be real challenging to do this from time to time because you have to be a listener. But you're going to learn something in this about how to problem solve, and maybe something about yourself and about how guilt has always may put you in a place of maybe overreacting to something based on an experience that you had. Realize that every day is an opportunity to learn something about yourself. And this thing about guilt, which has been with you from the moment you started taking instructions and learning, it's all a part of that human experience. And it has been used over and over and over. Probably everyone you've ever met for any length of time has had some sort of influence on you. And if you had an experience with them that might not have been great, say, a little bit of friction or something like that, guilt in some way may have been a part of that. So you've been experiencing that all your life, but if you've never learned some healthy ways to deal with it, it's probably kept you trapped in a place where you don't necessarily do a good job of taking care of yourself. You overcompensate. And by doing that, you lower your own value. You forget that there are times when people bring a lot of their own baggage to these situations, and they start heaping that on you. And then it's this dance. You react to them, they react to you. So I say we need to slow this thing down, have a conversation about it, and you can get some clarity, and you can take ownership for what you're responsible for, and possibly make this not only something that helps you grow, but the other person on the other side, it gives them an opportunity to speak to you. They can grow, they can learn something about the experience, and we both move forward. Like I said before, how many people really learn how to problem solve? I mean, if they haven't worked at it, then most people know how to complain. But the problem solving part often means that they have to get invested in a real solution. And it's not just about passing the buck, but being cause in the matter. And that could be a challenge for a lot of people, because most people are used to having a problem and telling somebody else to solve it. And what you learn from all of that is because solving problems is not an easy thing to do, especially these things that we create ourselves, being human beings. Many people never get past the complaint. That's just one complaint after another. And trying to be cause in the matter really puts you in a place of being much more powerful. I mean, think about that. If you can bring a solution, something that's well within the bounds of your capacity to do it, wouldn't you do it? Because then you have a problem, you have a solution, then you move on. And that's what you want to do. And ultimately, you spend less time in that negative space of feeling the guilt, which could literally weigh you down. I mean, it will suck the energy out of you to want to do anything. Because when a lot of people feel guilt, there is depression that follows, and the pressure that you feel when something like that hits you could just drag you down and make you not even want to get out of bed sometimes. And I've known that feeling, especially when I've done something that I had to really think about the impact on someone else. That's a big matter for me. I mean, I think about my kids and things that I might have said that I was like, oh, wow, I need to have a do-over, because I was having a reactionary moment rather than thinking about, okay, what meets this situation? I mean, here's an example of something that should make you feel bad. What if you have wrongfully accused somebody of something and then you realize later on that you did that? Wow, that should really make you pause and think about your humanness. That now you have to go clean up something, because if you can imagine what it feels like to do that to someone, I mean, think about the time that you were wrongfully accused of something and how upset and how hurt that made you. So for you to put that on somebody else, see, these are the kind of moments that we have as human beings. And the way to fix these is to go back to that person and number one, acknowledge that you did something that you didn't want to do, and you want to clean it up. You want to make it up to them. That's how you begin the healing process and get yourself out from under that cloud that, and it, like I say, it can drag you down. So guilt being what it is, there are times, like I said, when you start as a little child, your parents say things to you to try to get you to learn something. And by doing that, I think part of their intent is really to keep you safe. But when you don't check in with that, as you get older and older, you don't realize that what you learned as a kid was because you didn't have the capacity to understand things like adult concepts. But as you become more and more grown as an adult, you experience your life. Now you can actually put a different spin on some of these things that were told to you. So it really does serve you to investigate what some of these feelings are about when you experience them. And then when they happen to somebody else, the way that I've been talking about in this podcast, it gives you an opportunity to revisit it, not only for yourself and the experience of the other person, but to change how you feel so that you can do better at not only problem solving, but then to not repeat the kinds of things that can happen over and over, which cause you to get stuck and maybe people be mad and upset at you. I'm John Johnson. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Relationships Podcast, and I've been talking about guilt and getting beyond it.